So hey everyone, welcome to Small Farm Living. My name's Julie, and we are going to be doing some rustic, patriotic DIYs. Now the first one I have up for you today, I got this little frame at the Dollar Tree. All these little pieces, I used this template to cut out a piece of cardboard for my project. We are going to be putting the glass in the back because I need to actually use the cardboard face. And I'm going to paint this frame black. Now, this frame, the little wood beaded section all around it, is kind of like a raw wood, and what I didn't realize before I got started painting this is that all of the edges have a finish on them. So as I was working my way around this frame with the black paint, I was noticing that the black was kind of pulling away from the wood on the edges. So I finished painting the whole thing, and as you can see, I'm going to lift it up here. You can see how the little streaking is happening, and it goes down into the little groove by the beads as well, which was really frustrating. So I decided I'm just going to take a wet paper towel and I am going to rub the black paint off of the frame portion that has the finish on it. And it did leave a little bit of coloring on it, which was okay. But I mean, look how messy my fingers got. And I apologize for my hands anyway, because as you can tell from my name of my channel, I have a small flower and vegetable farm, and I am in full swing planting, transplanting, getting my fields ready. So back to the project, I put all of the pieces back into the frame and got them tightened down and turned it over. And I am going to be constructing a flag onto the face of this, and I'm going to use little ribbon roses. Now, I've had these ribbon roses forever. I got them from Wish. I looked up, I was wondering if Wish was still a thing, and I looked and they still are, but most people go to Temu now. But I had cut these off from a different project that I had done, but there still is a little bit on there. So I'm just going to take my scissors and cut the little wire off flush so that when I go to glue these to the cardboard, they sit flat against it. Now here I'm just trying to size up how many rows and how many roses I'm going to use for the little blue portion of the flag. And I decided it was only 2 rows, and that was even looking too long. So we ended up with 6 little roses here. And then I am going to take the red and the white roses, and I'm just going to get them all ready by clipping them down. Now that they're ready, I just want to size up how many rows I'm going to need, and hopefully it ends perfect. And oh my gosh, it did. I was so thankful. I didn't want to have to cram them in there. So now that I have all my rowing figured out, I am going to just glue these down. Not rocket science. I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but I just put a generous amount of hot glue on there and hold it down until it's in place and move on to the next piece. Now, I hadn't spaced out the row going horizontally, and luckily by the time I got to the end of the first top row, it fit just perfect as well. So I was very thankful for that because the frame had given me enough trouble. Now here I'm just putting you on a time lapse because, you know, you don't need to watch me glue down all the roses in slow motion. And I just did it like a normal flag. Red, white, red, red, white, red, white, and then I ended with red down at the bottom. And everything fit in perfect, and here is the final result. Now I did too, the other one I didn't show you. I'm not real thrilled with the little frame one because the background is kind of a tan color. I really like this one with the dark black background. Let me know what you think. So this video is part of the first of the month challenge, and this month it is Patriotic DIYs hosted by Rustic and Lace DIY and At Home with Gigi. Links to their channels as well as the playlist will be down in the description below. So as soon as this video is over, be sure you go down and check out their channels as well as the playlist to see what all the other creators have done. So craft number 2, we are going to be making a little flags, and I found these little they're not really skewers, but they're just wood dowel sticks that I got at Walmart. They're small. I'm going to use these for the sticks. And then I found this little piece at the Dollar Tree the other day. I'm going to deconstruct it. And here are some really cool burlaps. I got these at Joann Fabrics years ago, and I've never seen them again. Maybe they have them somewhere else, but they've been in my stash for several years. And I have these 3 different styles, just stripes, stars, flags. And then this is a burlap that has a sticky back. I wasn't sure if I was going to need this or not. I ended up not needing it. But the first thing I'm going to do, I want to tone down the color of these sticks, because if I hold them up to the burlap, you see how bright they are compared to the burlap. So I'm just going to use some of my Antique Waverly Wax, wipe it on, let it dry, and now you can see it's more of the color of the burlap, and it's not quite so clashy when they sit up next to each other. So I'm going to do the rest of those. Now that they are dry, I am going to set the rest of those aside, and my ribbon, and I just kind of want to, or my burlap ribbon, I guess I should call it, and it only has one side to it. So I was like, okay, I need to cut a straight line here just to make the end even. Then I'm gonna size up by wrapping it around so that I have a design on both sides. I didn't want it to just be a one-sided flag. So I'm just kind of making sure how I want it to be, and then I decided to use my pinking shears on this because I thought it would give it almost like that. You know how like flags, when they've been flying in the wind for a while, they kind of have that little tattered look at the end? That's what I was going with for using my pinking shears, but you can see it, but it's not really the look that I was thinking that it was going to give. So just cutting it flat with regular scissors, I ended up doing that with some of the other ones. But I just wanted to put a little topper on this, so the bead portion of this little piece that I got from the Dollar Tree, I'm just going to deconstruct it. And I'm going to alternate on some of my flags. I'm going to use a red bead, a white bead, a blue bead. This I'm going to use in a different project. And I was trying to push the skewers on so that, or I call them the skewers, but the little dowel sticks onto the bead so that a little bit of the stick stuck above the bead. And then I'm just sizing up where I'm going to want that to land on my stick. And then I'm just going to wiggle a strip of glue down on there, put the dowel on top of it, and then wrap it around, make sure that my ends are even and they all match before I smash it onto that dowel in place. And then once that side of it is dried, then I went ahead and I opened it back up. And then I just wiggled some glue down the top of the stick and wrapped it over. Again, made sure my ends matched. And then I just pressed down to make sure that the glue adhered to the front side of that stick. And then I proceeded to glue the top. And burlap is very porous, so I was trying to be careful and not put too much glue on there because it does ooze through if you're not careful and burns your fingers. Ask me how I know. And I did the bottom, and then I closed the side shut as well. And then I just gently tapped that closed. And so here we have one of the finished ones. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole thing over and over again. I just repeated the same process with each of the colors. Now, the red bead on this was a little too bright, so I put a little Antique Waverly Wax on there to tone it down to try to match the red on the actual piece. Now, when I got to the third flag, the hole in the white bead was too small, so I just took my little sander, toned the end down a little bit so I could get it put through there. And I'm just measuring so that my flags are all the same, and just repeated the process on this one as well. So now I have my 3 flags here. I did end up making 4. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to dress these up a little bit. Now, I found these letters and numbers at my local thrift store, $1 for a package like this. And there were like 4 of them, and I bought them all. I'm like, you know what? I never see these at the thrift store. So I bought those all, and then I pulled out a 1776, and I'm going to paint them white since they came in all colors. And I was struggling for a little bit with the one, and I thought, oh my word, just roll some tape so it's sticky, and I stuck them on top of there so they all stayed in place while I got them all painted. And I did end up doing 2 coats just so that none of the color showed through. Now on this one, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to put on it for a design. At first I was thinking about putting the numbers on it, but then I decided I would just cut out some strips for the flag top and do that one that way. And then I just set that aside for a second and sized up how I wanted to put my numbers on this flag. And at first I had them going in this direction. And after I looked at for a little bit, I decided I was going to change it up. And as I glued them down, I put them on in the other direction. It just made more sense. And you'll see that in the final reveal. But this was really hard not to get this on my fingers because these letters are small. But I got them all glued on there, and that's all I did for the star flag. So I set that one aside, and then back to this one, I just lifted up those strips and I glued each one of them in place. And on this flag, I ended up only putting them on one side. I think I just probably got distracted and had to run back outside and do more of my farming stuff. So I maybe eventually will put a few more strips on the other side just so they match. But here's what they looked like at the end. Here's the 1776 and then my other 3 flags that I made. And I'm going to have a lot of fun putting these into some decor. Now we're going to go on to craft number 3. And on this craft, I am going to take one of my canning rings. Now I have a whole bunch of these, so using a few in crafts is not going to hurt anything. Now this ribbon is also some that I got from Joann's, and I was trying to figure out if I could just pull the stitch and have it unravel on this, but the way they were sewn together, I couldn't. So I ended up just taking my scissors and cutting it. Now I'm sizing up how big I need to cut my strips for the loops that I'm going to put on here. And I have to give a little bit of extra room because I'm kind of doing a slip knot. And I used my old scissors for these because this is wired ribbon, and I'm not going to be using the wire on this. But what I ended up doing was taking my needle nose pliers and just grabbing a hold of the wire and slipping it out of each side. So that was out of the way. And then I went back to my good scissors, since now I was just cutting ribbon, and I cut out the strip of blue. And then I separated the strip of the white, well, you know, not really white, but I separated those 2 pieces. And then all I'm doing is making a loop and slipping it around and then pulling it tight. And it makes a little kind of slip knot on the end of the canning ring. And you could also use a wooden ring for this too, if you had those available. And I'm just gonna work my way all around. I'm gonna go red, and I know it's red, white, and blue. Because this is rustic decor, it's not really white. It's more like a, I don't know, beigey color. And I'm just going to work my way around the whole thing until I get it completely full. And now that it's full, I'm looking at it and it doesn't look as full as I want. And normally when I do things like this, I use fabric. And because this is ribbon, it's a little bit on the stiffer side. And so it wasn't kind of giving that fluffy look that I was going for. So I thought I'd take my pinking shears and cut down the center of each one of those ribbons to make it fuller. Still wasn't full enough for me. So I grabbed some of this fabric, which looks very patriotic, and I just cut out some thin strips to match the others, and I'm just going to slip them in between all around the edges. And then now that I have that done, I still wasn't sure if I wanted to add more, but I'm going to take some more of this star burlap and I'm going to cut out a circle so that I can fill the center void. And then I just glued it into place the best that I could. I was getting glue everywhere. And now as I'm looking at this, I'm just trying to get this pushed up before the glue sets in place, and then pulling some of these taut. I am going to take these 2 extra adornments that were on the bottom of that decor piece that I took apart for the other project, and I'm going to string the hat through and trying to just eye up the distance of how far I want the 2 to be apart from each other. And then I'm just tying a knot at the top of the hat so that it stays in place. And then I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue and I'm just going to put a couple dabs on the back side of the hat. And then I'm going to pull that jute twine over top of the glue and hold that in place until it dries so that the hat doesn't flop around and the string doesn't end up, you know, flopping into the front of the hat and look silly. So now that I got that secured onto there, I was like, oh, girlfriend, you should not have put the centerpiece in until you slipped the bottom through and tied it. So I set that aside for a second. I noticed that at the top, where the hanger needed to be for the top, the glue hadn't completely sealed. So I was able to slip a piece of jute twine through there and get a knot tied on there for the hanger at the top. And then I just glued it shut after I was done with that. And then I went on back to the bottom, and then I thought, you know what, I can just loosen one of these knots on this piece of ribbon and slip the string through there and tie a knot onto that, and that will work just fine. I just kind of got ahead of myself on this one. So again, I'm just trying to size the distance that I want because I'm going to add one more little piece above the hat once we get this tied on there. And at first when I was taking this piece apart, I wasn't sure if I was going to use the hat, but once I got the top piece made. I thought it would look cute on there. Then I decided I wanted to make little sweet cuts on the end of all of this ribbon. So off camera, I did all that. Now I also found these at the thrift store. These are those like little pegboard sign things that you stick the numbers and letters into. And I just took my needle nose pliers and broke off the little prongs that hold them onto the board so that they would sit flat. And I am going to glue these onto a piece of ribbon. Now I'm going to use that same piece of ribbon or fabric, excuse me, that I used on the piece on the top. And then again, oh my word, these are so tiny. It was hard to get them all glued on there, but we got the 250 for the 250th year celebration of our nation. And I'm going to trim down the ribbon so that it's just fitting the 250 on there. And then I'm going to take some Fabri-Tac instead of some hot glue so that it's not lumpy. And I'm going to smear a bunch onto the bottom piece of ribbon, and then I'm going to lay the jute twine over top of that so it's sandwiched in between the two pieces. And I'm going to take the 250, lay it over top of that, and then press it together until it's nice and secure. And that's how it was looking. So now here it is hanging up. Sorry, the lighting is not super great right now, but you can see how the top, it filled out a little bit more. Like I say, normally I use fabric on that, but then we have our 250 for the celebration, the little hat, and the little tassel at the bottom, and I added a white star to the top of the tassel. So overall, I think it turned out really sweet for using the stiffer ribbon. So let me know down in the comments what you think. So now we're going to move on to our fourth and final craft for today, and this one is really quick and easy. Now this is a coffee can. My dad, who is no longer with us, he saved all the coffee cans out in his shop, and let me tell you, I have a huge contractor bag full, but I don't like to ruin them. So I am going to take a piece of brown packing paper, and I am just going to wrap it around the top where the top seam is and get that all nice and taut. And then once I do, I can then take my fingernail and score where the bottom rim is, so that once I take that off, I have a nice line that will show me where I need to cut. And so now that I have that all cut out, I'm just going to take my can, I'm going to wrap the paper around it, and you can either just tape this into place. I used hot glue, but I only used hot glue on the paper, so it's not actually stuck to the label of the can or anything. It's just going to be paper on paper. And I did a very thin layer so it wasn't bulky and frumpy. Pulled it tight and secured that down. And then I took some more of my wide jute that I made the flags out of, and I decided that I wanted to wrap the center of this with some of that. So I just chose this pattern because it was the most simple, because I'm also going to use some ribbon. And I didn't secure it much of anywhere except for at the end. I just secured it down, and then when I got to the other side, I lined up the stripes, gave it another little smear of hot glue, and got that put down into place. And then once that was glued on there nice and secure, I grabbed this ribbon again. I got this at Joann's a long time ago. Trimmed up the ends because the wires always like to stick out. And I did leave the wires in here for this because it wasn't really hurting anything. And I'm just going to cover up that entire middle stripe with the ribbon. So again, just secured it at the start and just securing it at the end. I didn't glue it on the other side at all. And I got it nice and taut, so it didn't matter. So now I'm looking at it, and you can see the packing paper because that burlap, that strip of burlap isn't wide enough. So what I'm going to do is just take this really thick rope, and I'm going to glue around the base, and I'm going to glue around the top, just to hide it and give it a little more flair. And so here's what we're looking like when that's done. Now this is the back, so you're never going to see that. I'm just going to have this all facing the front. And I really, really, really wanted to get a fern, and I went to town and looked for a fern, and they didn't have one, so I just grabbed a couple of my bedding plants that I grow and stuck it in there for now. And I just thought this turned out really sweet. Once I get a pretty little fluffy fern, I'm definitely going to put it in there and enjoy this one. So now it's time for the final reveal of all the projects that we did today. So starting off, we're going to take a look at the hanging piece again that we did with all of the ribbon and the fabrics and the little adornments on it. I thought it turned out really fun. And then we'll move over to the ribbon rose flags. And again, they're both sweet. I just do prefer the one with the black background. So if I ever do one in a frame again, definitely not that frame and trying to paint it again, but I'll use black. And then we had our coffee can, and then our little flags. I thought they all turned out really sweet in their own way, and I like that they're all kind of rustic style. And I will be doing more videos coming up, patriotic. Some of them will probably be more sparkly and fun. But let me know what you thought, if you had a favorite. Let me know where you're watching from. And as always, thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see you next time.